Hey guys, Kate Miller coming to you here on our latest Zoom session. I am joined by one of my favorite people. I've gotten to know Miss Christi Milledge over the past couple of years professionally. And Christi is somebody whose spirit I've always just really enjoyed. And she's so knowledgeable and something that we are going to be talking about today. So I asked her to join me to help give us some info. So, hey, Christi, thank you for joining me.
Hey.
Christi, I just want to tell everybody a little bit about your background and your qualifications. You are a superhero these days. You're a nurse working in Charlotte, North Carolina, currently with Charlotte Surgery Center as a pre-op nurse and PACU. But you have history in both of the major hospital systems here in Charlotte in the nursing capacity, both as clinical nurse, healthcare technician, like all of these things. You've been everywhere.
Yeah.
Impressive. Yeah. So I wanted to talk with you today. No kidding, COVID is all over the news and it's all that we all talk about all day long. But something that is really important, I think, that is being overlooked is that folks are coming to the hospital without some pretty important documents that you can get prepared ahead of time very quickly. Healthcare power of attorney document. Mm-hmm. And then the advanced directive for a natural death, also called a living will. So tell me, just in your experience as a nurse, how important are those documents from your perspective as a care provider?
Well, I mean, especially working in pre-op, when we sign surgical consent, that's one of the top questions I have is, do you have an advanced directive, a living will, or a healthcare proxy? Mm-hmm. 99% of the people say, no, I know I should get one, but I don't have one.
That's shocking to me that they're going in knowing they're having surgery and they haven't prepared those documents.
The few that say, yes, I do have one, and then I say, oh, do you have it with you? Oh, no, it's at home. Do I need it? Like, well, no, hopefully not. But, next time it would be a good idea just to bring it in and have, whoever's with you today, leave it with them. Leave a copy with them just in case. But of course, today your surgery is going to go beautifully. We're not going to have any issues.
Right.
But if you have one, bring it with you. Just bring it just so that we have it. We don't even need just have a copy of it ready to go. So if something does happen, we at least have some guideline of where to start.
Right. And those documents, so the healthcare power of attorney is the legal document where you are appointing a person to make decisions on your behalf. That's your healthcare proxy. So that person gets to, if you're unable to communicate your own wishes, the healthcare agent is the person that the doctors and the nurses will go to say, what are we supposed to do here? Yeah. What are Kate's wishes? What does she want to have done? In the event that it's necessary for her to have a feeding tube or an IV to get her hydration. There's a whole gamut, a whole list of things that the healthcare power of attorney document entails. Correct. So do you have thoughts or advice for folks on what, who they should appoint as a healthcare agent?
Don't necessarily assume that it is your husband, wife, mom, dad who will be able to do that for you. Talk with your family members, find someone, and it may not even be a family member. It may be a very good friend, someone that that when you are unable to answer those questions for yourself will do what they know you want to do, not what they want to have done for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
As you know exactly what you want to have done and what you don't want to have done, and you've been married for 50 years and your husband can't imagine living life without you. When we come to you to ask a question about what do we do, in his mind, he may not care that you don't want X, Y, or Z. He just doesn't want to lose you. So he may do whatever has to be done to save your life, even though that really isn't what you want. Sure. Versus having a level-headed person that comes in that isn't quite as emotionally attached to you, that could say, look, this is what she told me she would want done. A little more level-headed and a little more almost one step removed from the situation. And it's not, and I'm not saying it can't be a spouse. It can't, sometimes it's an adult child is better off to make those decisions than a spouse.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's an adult sibling
Mm-hmm.
that would be better to make those choices for you, just because you know that you're on the same page. We all have very different beliefs about healthcare and death and dying and what we want to have done and what we don't want to have done. So to choose someone that you know follows that same belief system as you will make it easier for you.
Yeah. And speaking of
It
belief
just will.
systems, I mean, there are some religious implications for folks who have specific religious beliefs, and
Yes.
that's something that you've come across in your practices.
And we do, primarily Jehovah's Witnesses who don't want blood, or blood products. And we always have to they always will sign something different, because even within Jehovah's Witnesses, some will say no blood or blood products at all. Some will say no blood, but I will take certain blood products.
Like plasma and
There are various things we can pull out of the blood itself, that I don't want the actual blood, but I'm okay with X, or I'm okay with Y, or I'm okay with blood after you try all these other things first. Then, but we need to know those things. If you don't want blood or blood products and you're having surgery, then we need to know that if something happens and you start bleeding out, that you do not want us to give you blood. We need to know that, because the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start giving you blood.
Right.
And if you don't want that blood, and we don't know you don't want that blood, our hands are tied. We're going to do whatever we have to do. Versus, so as much information as you can provide ahead of time makes it easier in those moments when it is a split, like we need to make a decision now. That is not the time to be having discussions about, what should we do? Should we do this? Should we do that? That is not the time. The time to have those discussions is long before anything happens.
Mm-hmm. And so help me clear up some misconceptions that I personally had before I started practicing law and looking at these documents and drafting them on a daily basis. The advance directive for natural death. I always thought that document, pre-law school, I always thought that document was basically saying, don't do anything to try to save my life. Not a single thing. I just want to die, right? That's not the case. It's got a lot of different factors, different scenarios that you can choose. And so when you see those documents in a client's file or a patient's file, how does that help you treat them with better care?
So, if they come in with an advance directive, then that means they've written down their wishes as to how their medical care will be provided if they are unable to be a part of that discussion for whatever reason. So it might be, I do not want a feeding tube. You may give me hydration through an IV. You may, figure out some other ways to feed me, but please do not put in a feeding tube. You might say, I do not want to be intubated. Absolutely not. I don't want to live on a machine. If that's how it's going to be to save my life, do not intubate me. I do not want to be intubated.
Right.
There may be you may say, I don't want CPR. You can treat it medically and do as much as you can medically to fix whatever the problem is. But if it's getting to the point of CPR, please don't. I don't want that done to me. So it is not just a matter of let me die, don't do anything. It's a matter of and again, and it's not always a terminal issue. It's not always necessarily you are dying. What are we doing to save your life? It is, you're in surgery, so you are clearly unable to answer questions, but something happens, and we then kind of need to know, which way are we going here? So it's not always a life or death, and I think that's what people think about these living wills and advance directives is you're just making life or death decisions, but you're not. You're writing down if you are in a position where you are needing health care and you are unable to answer for yourself, what would you like to have done?
Yeah. And something that I learned.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say something I learned from you when we were talking before we started recording was that there's a whole nother document that deals with this that you can just tell your doctor directly. You don't even have to get it prepared legally, but a DNI was one that I had never heard of.
You can have you can go to your primary care doctor, the doctor that you see kind of for your one that the one that kind of is your mainstay of all of your health care. You could have it go on to your cardiologist and whatever doctors you have as well. If another reason why it's a good idea to have all of your doctors within the same system, whether you go through, whichever healthcare system, because your chart electronically travels with you anywhere you go that way, is to say, look, I want in my file, I do not want to be resuscitated. If you find me on, something happens, I don't want anything at all. I just want, do not resuscitate, do not intubate. You can have them indicate that in your chart. And then when you show up in the emergency room and we pull up your chart, we flag it with, a brightly colored piece of paper that says, this patient has a DNR.
Yeah, something I didn't know. We learn something new every day. Thank you, Christi.
And again, even if you don't do the paperwork portion of it to do an advance directive or a living will, at least assigning someone a healthcare proxy, so you at least have someone being your voice when you can't answer those own questions. That alone makes a huge difference, because family members think they're all on the same page and they're all going to get along. But I guarantee you, when grandma's in the hospital and you know what grandma wants and you're trying to abide by grandma's wishes, there will be a family member that wants to say, absolutely not, you do whatever you have to do to save grandma's life.
Yeah.
And then other family members are saying, but grandma didn't want that. Like, we know grandma didn't want that. If nothing's written down and there's no healthcare proxy, that opens up a huge can of worms for the healthcare providers, because they're not sure what to do.
Yeah, and your hands are kind of tied. And time is of the essence and all those. Right.
So if nothing else, to have a healthcare proxy that says, if I am unable to answer my healthcare questions, I want this person to answer for me. That eliminates a lot of the family drama that happens in situations like that.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, Christi, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, out of your work, that I know is so fulfilling to you, but it's super stressful for everybody in the healthcare field right now. Thank you. And what I'm going to ask you to do, as a favor to me, is to pick 5 of your favorite nurse friends, and you guys all come and get your new healthcare power of attorney prepared.
Yay, that would be awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go enjoy the rest of your day off. Thank you again for joining us. Christi Milledge, everybody, nurse, practitioner, superstar. Thank you.
Not practitioner, just registered nurse, not a nurse practitioner. Registered nurse.
For correcting me. I know there's so many different letters and I don't have them all memorized.
Current COVID tester. So I'm wearing the full-blown hazmat suits out in the parking lot. testing our patients before they come in for surgery. So I get to do COVID testing every day.
Send me a picture. Thanks, Christi. We'll talk to you soon.
I have one. I will.
Please.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye, guys.